Hey y'all, it is Kim from Chim and Cad, and I just got back from seeing Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club. Cheers to a great show. I'm going to talk you through it, and we'll see if Adam Lambert is right for the part. Okay, so you probably know by now when you get there, you walk through an actual sort of alleyway, which is converted to be the entrance of the Kit Kat Club. And so from the time you're in front of the theater, before you even get in the theater, you're transported back to Berlin. This is a little footage of going through this part. Once you get past where this green eye is, they ask you to cover your phone with a sticker, and so there are no more videos or still shots of anything from this point on, unfortunately. But it's a nice way to keep everything a surprise and a secret and make it nice for the patrons in the club, so to speak. So once you make your way into the theater, remember you kind of came in from the back entrance. You're not at the front of the August Wilson. So if you've been there for Mean Girls or you went for Funny Girl, that's not where you end up. So to go there, you need to go down the stairs, and then that's where the restrooms are. There's only one set of restrooms in the theater, and it's on the bottom floor. And that's where the main bar is located. But what's interesting about the Kit Kat Club is they transformed the entire theater. Again, not just the entrance to it, but the whole theater has been repainted. So you'll see murals throughout. You'll see the famous sort of eye symbol all the way throughout. And then when you get there before the show, they have pre-show dancers and musicians. So all around, they're kind of roaming. They'll just sort of take place on a stage that's there on the bottom floor. There's also little almost like go-go dancer sort of set up stages. And then they'll be in the main orchestra section of the theater on that stage, but they're also in the audience. So at any turn, you can run into an accordion player or a clarinet player or a violin player or multiple dancers that entertain you prior to the actual show starting. And so this just is a bunch of fun. Like I said, everywhere you turn, you see different things going on. Grab a drink. They do similar to the Hudson Theater and have everything in real glasses, which I appreciate as far as like context and the classiness of it, but I also like a sippy cup. So when you're walking up and down stairs, you're not worrying about spilling things. When you're sitting in your seat through a 3-hour show, you're not worried about it, but I get it. I get why they have the real glasses. Prior to the show, some of the seats have actual tables. You can actually order food. We didn't do that, but we were able to sit at a table this time. And full disclosure, we had a hookup through a friend who works there, and they were able to get us upgraded seats for very cheap, for like less than lottery tickets. And we had front row center table seats right on stage. So the entire time, the dancers, the actors, everybody was passing right in front of us, looking straight at us, giving us eye contact throughout the show. We saw, people coming, people going, and then of course a full view of the stage itself. So you've probably seen, but the stage is maybe 12 feet across, circular shape. They've completely gutted where the actual stage would be. If you're looking straight on like the proscenium and the stage itself, that is now a different mezzanine level seating that's added onto the theater. So if you're there, you are actually sitting where the stage would be / backstage. So it's kind of neat to see that. And if you, we kind of roamed around a little bit before the show, and if you look sort of up and around, you see like the actual ropes of, said backstage. But again, they transformed the entire theater, and that's no longer the case. So speaking of this transformation, you already know Tom Scott won the Tony for set design. And again, when we saw it last spring before the Tonys, you couldn't imagine anyone else winning that year, because it wasn't just about the set. The actual set is very minimal, and the props and whatnot, but it's really about being immersed in this huge transformation of the entire August Wilson Theater. Now is set as a cabaret club in the middle of 1930s Berlin. And you really feel like that's the case. So let's talk about why you might have clicked on this video. Adam Lambert. You know him from American Idol. You know he is the lead singer for Queen and took over as the frontman there. You've seen him in Glee and other shows, but this was his Broadway debut. So how was it? I thought he played the role beautifully. I thought it was made for him. It makes so sense because it's a campy role, but you also have to sing. There's some acting, but the acting is more movement and facial expression, if so to speak. So I thought he did great for his Broadway debut. If I were to compare Adam Lambert and Eddie Redmayne, I prefer the Adam Lambert version, to be honest. Eddie, I know, garnered some criticism from critics, but also just from regular people who went, like me. I thought his performance was okay. It was a little tight in places. Again, I'm not a critic, but it just felt a little forced in other places and a little awkward and odd in some places. I thought he did well. He sang well, he acted well, he played the part. I didn't think we wasted money. I was happy to see him, and I thought he did a great job. So we saw him last spring when this transferred to Broadway. You might remember that Eddie Redmayne started the revival in the West End prior to the transfer. So the Emcee's role, they start the show and introduce all the other main characters. But some of the songs are more in jest, or some of the songs are supposed to be joyful. Others are supposed to be funny or even satire. But there's one song in particular where you actually need a great singing voice, and it's more of a ballad, and it sets the tone for something to come later. And in doing so, I think Adam was great at this. So the song Tomorrow Belongs to Me is first sung by the Emcee in a very touching way, and it's very earnest and emotional at the same time. And then that's sort of countered by the reprise of that song later at the very end of Act 1, where a big thing is revealed about what's actually going on behind the scenes. And when you're not in the Kit Kat Club having fun and drinking and dancing, what's actually happening in the rest of Berlin and other parts of Europe at the time. And so that big reveal again is that reprise of Tomorrow Belongs to Me, which is, I think, done in such a different way than the first time you hear it from the Emcee. So that's where I think Adam really showed his vocals and his singing ability. Not that it doesn't come out in like the first the Welcome In, which is the famous Emcee song, but that's more about flair and fun. And again, this ballad that he sings later that ends up transforming and sort of transposing into this other song that's very dark and sort of creepy. You don't get that unless you get the first version first. So I think the obviously directors and original Kander and Ebb knew that. And so I think Adam does that justice. And then let's talk about his acting, because I thought it was good. This wasn't, a Shakespeare play by any means. And I think maybe that was great for his debut, because he got to sing, he got to be center stage in several of the songs. The costumes, the makeup, and all of it, add to the flair and add to the fun, especially in the first half of the show. And then the acting for the Emcee isn't a lot, to be honest. They have lines, of course. They're introducing other main characters and big players, and they're looking on. So again, in this production, the Emcee is always sort of lingering, even if you don't know that he's there. They're kind of off to the side. Again, we got to see this up close, being right there by the stage. And sometimes he was literally just sort of hanging on a pole right next to us. But again, the Emcee's the host of the night, and not always the star. So there's not a lot of dramatic scenes with the Emcee as far as dialogue goes. And so I think that's probably a perfect fit for somebody who's new to Broadway and known for singing and not as much known for acting. So again, I think that worked out great in his favor. And like I said, I was really pleasantly surprised and happy with his performance. And I thought his vocals were much better, and his full-on demeanor just matched what I thought the Emcee would be. I hadn't seen it live before the Eddie Redmayne version. I've seen, of course, the movie with Joel Grey, and I've seen clips and things with Alan Cummings. But again, my first time seeing it live was Eddie Redmayne, and I just think the overall mood, demeanor, emotions really fit Adam Lambert and his style. So for Sally Bowles, we saw her understudy, and I thought she did an excellent job. I'm going to say her name, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing, but it's Ayla Ciccone Burton. And she's usually one of the main Kit Kat dancers, and she understudied for Sally Bowles the night we saw it, and I thought she did a lovely job too. And then of course I can't not talk about Bebe Neuwirth and Steven Skybell. This was now the second time we saw them in their roles, and I think this time, and maybe it was because we were closer, who knows, but I did feel like they were stronger in their roles, if that's even possible. And they were, of course, both nominated for Tonys last summer. So I'm happy to see that they're still in it. And, it's just anytime you get to see Broadway legends on stage like that, it's worth the ticket price. I will say in this production, because the stage is so centered and it's not your regular dimensions of a stage, the way the dancers come in and out is really lovely. Sometimes they're cloaked in like sheets, and sometimes they're sort of making almost like trains, like connecting themselves from the outside into the stage. Other times they seem to pop up very quickly. But again, they're like walking through and walking by the audience members as they have to do this. And again, all of this was so well thought out of how that would go. I do think the choreography is really nice and lovely. Again, different because it's that circular stage and not as much space as a regular show would be. So I'm sure there are constraints to how that would go. It's really fun to sit closer and actually see the eye contact and the playfulness of all of the dancers up close and personal. And if you're shy, maybe don't sit so up close, because they definitely interact with you, and will almost like stare you down. So eye contact is probably an understatement. Like, they stare you down in a lot of the more sort of racy scenes, especially. I think it's interesting to think about Cabaret as being autobiographical. So before this was turned into a Broadway show and a movie, it was actually written in a book by Cliff, so to speak. His name wasn't Cliff, and her name wasn't Sally Bowles. Instead, it was Christopher Isherwood, and he was an American novelist traveling to Berlin, and all of these things took place. He met Jean Ross, again, not Sally Bowles, and he writes about their encounters, including her abortion back in the 30s. So it's interesting to think about the context of what happened in the 20s and 30s, not just politically and like the pre-war and pre-Holocaust time period, but also what happened with these two people. I just think it's just so interesting to know that they actually existed. Just like when you learn about Fanny Brice being a real person in the Ziegfeld Follies, and then of course like how their legacy goes on through a different form, right? So as we go and spend money on tickets that are probably too expensive, but to see these actors and dancers and singers tell their story every night on stage, but really knowing that they're telling the story of these people that really lived. Okay, so if you have a chance, I would definitely go see Adam Lambert. If you missed Eddie Redmayne, I do think some of the tickets have come down in price. So that's an advantage. But I also think Adam Lambert really does put on a great MC. And like I said, you still get BB Newirth and Steven Skybell. I can't say anything about the new lead who took Sally Bowles. Like I said, her understudy was great. But it's a fun night in the theater, and the immersiveness from the get-go is unrivaled. And so if you really want to spend a night out on the town, and you want to make your way to 52nd Street in the August Wilson Theater, I think it'll be a lovely night. So cheers.